friends, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany and it is weekend reading vlog time. So it's Friday morning and it's been a very busy week. My in-laws were here for all of this week and a little bit of last week. So it was really great having them here. They live like 1,000 miles away, so we only get to see them like usually once or twice a year. So it was really wonderful to be able to spend some time with them. But we were doing a little sightseeing and some fun stuff, and then you know how it is after you have a house guest for a while, that then you're just like really tired afterwards, even though it's great and you love having them there. So my in-laws left yesterday, and my daughter got glasses yesterday, so even yesterday was kind of a little busy. The plan is to do some school because we haven't done school at all this week, although the cool part about homeschooling is all the fun stuff that we went to go see pretty much counts as a field trip. So I have 2 days of school for that, but not the same as actually doing like book learning. So we're gonna do some school today. Chantel at An Intentional Life is hosting like kind of a reading challenge this week to see how many, or this weekend I should say, to see how many pages you can get read in a weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the books I'm going to be working on are, I know you're surprised, Les Mis. Still working my way through this. I am about halfway through book 4, and the live show for book 4 is tomorrow afternoon. So will I read the next 150 pages and be caught up in time? I'm not sure. I would like to be, but this is going to be my main focus that I'm reading today. You can see I am well over halfway through, which is such a lovely feeling. As an update on how the book itself is going, Victor Hugo still has his tangents that he goes off on. It seems like the beginning of every book, he takes like a good 50 pages and just goes off and talks about something that isn't necessarily relevant to the specific plot, which I think is why people prefer the abridged version. But in book 4, the beginning thing that he was talking about is he was talking about what caused the French Revolution, and then just different like socioeconomic classes, how they interacted with each other, and how that affected Paris, where it stands during this book when it takes place. And so I actually found that really fascinating. I'm sure there's a lot of people who found it kind of boring, but I felt like it really did help me make more sense of the story and its setting. So I really actually enjoyed it and found it really interesting. Right now he's on a little tangent where he's talking about slang, which is interesting. That one's not quite as interesting to me, but both of them are still way more interesting than when he goes off on his nunnery rant. That one was a bit much for me. And Waterloo too. Although Waterloo is beautifully written. Again, just didn't have the historical context to, I don't know, enjoy that as much as I could have maybe. The other book that I'm working through this weekend is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. I always say his last name wrong. Bulgakov. There we go. I always like stutter over it. I have such a hard time pronouncing it for some reason. So I have already started this one. I'm probably like about 1/3 of the way through. This is a buddy read that I'm doing with Noah from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse, Christina from Knitting Books, etc., Christy Liz from Dostoevsky in Space, and a couple other people that I'm forgetting. But quite a few of us are in a Voxer group reading this together. Everyone else is way further along than I am because I'm kind of working through Les Mis and a few other books trying to round out my summer book bingo. But this is my second to last square on my summer book bingo, so I am hoping to finish this weekend. It is so weird. It's one of the weirdest books I have ever read. So Bulgakov wrote this during the Stalinist regime in, I think, the early 1900s. I want to say like 1920 to 1930s. So this is definitely like an indictment on that, and it was not published until after his death. He couldn't publish it in his lifetime, or he would have probably died much sooner than he did. So a lot of this is definitely a critique of that, but it's also really strange. It's basically the devil shows up in Moscow, and much of Moscow doesn't even believe in him and are atheistic, and so he's able to just like wreak so much havoc, and no one even kind of realizes who he is or what he's doing. So it's a very interesting concept, but it's so strange. Like there's this like huge black cat that walks on its back legs and acts like a human, and I don't know what that's supposed to symbolize. I may have to do a little more research into this just to see if it is like specific symbolism or if it was just bizarre. But it is supposed to be a satire. It's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be weird. But yeah, it is really, really strange. I was trying to read it this week before I went to bed when my in-laws were here, and at the end of the day I was just so tired, and this book is just so strange that I'd read the same page like 3 times before I would get it. So I did not make a lot of progress on this book this week, but I would like to finish it up. So I don't really have a whole lot of plans this weekend, which is kind of nice after how busy my week has been. Anyway, we'll just see where the weekend takes us, I guess. Hello. So after school, we kind of finished school kind of early, around 11, and my daughter was like, if I finish school quickly, could we go to the lake? So as you saw from my video clips, we spent a good chunk of the afternoon at the lake, which is kind of one of the advantages of homeschooling. We went to the lake and there was like not one other person there until right when we were about to leave, and then a few cars pulled up, but it was just really quiet and peaceful. And then we came home, and it's amazing how swimming just wears you out. Like I was so tired when we came home, but I have made some progress in Les Mis. I've read about 50 pages so far today and am really enjoying it. I feel like Victor Hugo is going on more tangents in this section than he has in a while, but the tangents feel really useful to me, and they're giving me a lot of clarity on kind of the context of the rebellion in Paris. So I'm enjoying that. The only section I haven't enjoyed is, oh my gosh, that I did finish that section on slang, and I just was like, what was the point? I am in a Discord group where we're talking about this, and someone actually said like that they weren't sure. They're like, were editors a thing when Victor Hugo was writing? Because if they weren't, then his writing was probably part of the reason why editors were introduced. And I was like, I could see that. Like, I see why so many people read the abridged version, because the unabridged version is not for the faint of heart. There are sections that are very difficult to get through and don't seem very relevant to the story. However, it is interesting because there were characters that were introduced in other parts that seemed like nothing, like why are these characters being introduced and then we didn't see them again, but now we are seeing some of them again in part 4. They're actually playing bigger roles. So that's kind of interesting that he is bringing some of that background. I don't know if I'm going to get like another 100 pages read before the live show tomorrow. I'm not feeling overly optimistic about that. I feel like if it was 50 more pages, I could push through, but 150, I'm not sure. But I am at the point where I feel like I've read enough of it that I can go ahead and participate in the live show and be able to follow most of it. I'm familiar with the musicals, so there aren't any major plot points that are gonna be super spoilery to me. So now it's dinner time, and my husband is not home, he's working, and I am never motivated to make like a decent dinner when he's not home. I don't know if I'm like alone in that, but you know, it's just me and my daughter, so we'll probably just have like a snacky kind of dinner. I'll probably make popcorn. There are other things that we'll probably eat too, but popcorn just sounds really good right now, especially if I'm planning to read some more. Popcorn is like my favorite reading snack. I don't know if I'm the only one who likes to snack when I'm reading. But if you do, I'd be curious to know what your favorite reading snack is. I'm totally caught up in Les Mis. I actually read quite a bit of it yesterday and only had like 40 pages left this morning, so I just kind of like powered through it. Although powered through it's probably the wrong terminology because I really loved this part. This might have been one of my favorite parts so far. Although I think when I get on the live, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that because there are just like chapters and chapters of Hugo examining like the royalty versus impoverished people versus like bourgeoisie, which is like the middle class people. There's a lot of examination of that. Right before there's a point where like the characters are building this barricade during the rebellion in Paris, which is like a huge like central part of like the second half of the book. He talks about the difference between riots and insurrections and talks about overthrow of government and, you know, how do you know whether or not this is just a violent riot or this is something that's going to actually like have traction and is necessary. And I really thought his thoughts on that were very, very interesting, especially given some of the things that have happened, you know, over the last year or so in our country. However, most of this part was like extremely slow because we have all of these explanations and tangents per Hugo's style. And then we also have, you know, Marius and Cosette's love story really being developed. And then the undertones of starting another like revolution / rebellion or whatever, and that doesn't really gain like full traction until the end of this part, and that's kind of where it gets like more exciting and more action-packed. Hugo's characterization of like seemingly not important side characters is amazing because then he brings these characters back later and it totally tugs at your heartstrings, and I cried at the end of this part. So it's the first time I cried since part 1, Fantine's story, which if you've seen the musical or movies or anything like that, Fantine's part always makes me cry, and the song I Dreamed a Dream is probably my favorite song in the entire musical, and I sob every time I hear it. So it was no surprise that I cried there, but I wasn't expecting to feel so emotional about some of the things that happened in part 4. So it's still a few hours before the live show, so I can, you know, do some other stuff. I have some catching up of housework to do because it's kind of lazy yesterday because we went to the beach. That was not the responsible thing to do, but I'm very glad we did it. So I have some, you know, just life stuff to catch up on. And then I'm probably going to dive into the Master Margarita. But the sad part is I was like so into reading Les Mis. I just kind of like want to keep reading that. But I have books I have to finish by the end of August, and one of them is a buddy read. So I really probably need to be responsible and switch over to the Master and Margarita because I still have until I think it's like the second week. I don't know. I think it's the second weekend in September to finish Les Mis. So I only have one part left. I am on page 1051 out of 1304 pages. So that's only about like 250 pages left, which is so amazing to me because I remember when I started this book and I was like 200 pages in, I was like, wow, it looks like I have made no progress. But now I have 250 pages left and right there, and it looks like I have read so much. So I don't have really any official plans today other than the live show at 1 o'clock. So I guess we'll just kind of see where the day takes us, but I'm hoping to get caught up on some stuff and to make some progress on the Master and Margarita. So while I was getting caught up in my cleaning and putting stuff away, I realized I have like a whole box of books that Peter's grandmother sent when my in-laws, when they came to visit. So I have some books that I'm going to share with you. I do have some other books for like a book haul video, but I'm kind of waiting on that one. So I'm just going to share these ones separately. Some of these I've heard of, some of them I haven't, some of them I already have copies of, and some I don't. So the book right on top here is Dorothy Gilman's The Unexpected Mrs. Polifax. I have never even heard of this before, but when I was looking through these when my in-laws came, the back says, Mrs. Virgil Polifax of New Brunswick, New Jersey, was a widow with grown married children. She was tired of attending her garden club meetings. She wanted to do something good for her country. So naturally, she became a CIA agent. As one does. I just love the description on the back. I think there's more on here about it, but I just thought that was so funny. There's also a copy of Little Men in here, which I do already have, but the edition I have is like an antique version. So I may keep this one for reading. I'm not sure yet. We have this book, Narnia and Beyond. So I guess maybe it's just like about the allegorical elements of Narnia. Not really sure. We have The Little Book Room by Eleanor Farjeon. I don't know anything about this, but I love the title and it just sounds really sweet. There are illustrations in here also, and I love them. So really don't know what this is about, but it sounds good. Next we have Streams in the Desert. I have heard a lot about this. This is like a devotional book and I've heard it's really good. So we'll probably read this at some point. Next we have Anne of Green Gables, which I do own, but my daughter just like fell in love with this edition. She was flipping through. And this edition actually has pictures in it. Let me see if I can find one. Ours doesn't, which doesn't bother me because then you can kind of like make up your own imaginings of how things look, but the illustrations in here are just really lovely, and I love the picture on the back. I love the scene. It is one of my favorites from the book. Next we have this book that's about Laura Ingalls Wilder. I have another book about Laura Ingalls Wilder, and then I have Prairie Fires, which is a biography about her. So I haven't read any of them, but I loved Laura Ingalls Wilder's books when I was growing up. So I'm interested in like maybe taking some time, maybe like a month or something, and just kind of immersing myself in her life at some point. Next we have this Autobiography of Gk Chesterton. I have not read any Gk Chesterton, so I don't know whether or not I'm interested in reading this. Maybe. Next we have yet another copy of Heidi, which if you know me, you know I love Heidi. Actually, I think maybe you can see all my Heidi there? Yeah, I love Heidi. I have, oh, sorry. I have 3 copies of Heidi besides this one, and then the sequel, Heidi's Children, which I haven't read yet, but I want to. But this one's so pretty. How am I supposed to not keep this? I'm totally keeping it. I don't care. I feel like I can't have too many editions of Heidi. If I was running out of room, maybe I'd make a choice and narrow it down, but I'm not, so I don't have to. We have the original illustrated Mark Twain. This is a very thick book. I do own some of the books in here. It's got Huckleberry Finn, The Prince and the Pauper, and I own both of those, but it has a Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, which I have read, but I do not own, so I'll likely hang on to this one. Next, we have this book on great civilizations, which is, you know, just little, it has just like little blurbs and pictures of different civilizations and stuff. So good resource for homeschooling. Which really is, there's another Streams in the Desert here. This one says volume 2, so maybe it's different than the other one. I don't know. Next we have 8 Cousins by Louisa May Alcott. I have had someone on here, if it was you, let me know, told me that 8 Cousins is your favorite Louisa May Alcott. So I don't know anything about this one, and I haven't read it, so would like to at some point, but I don't own this one, so I was really excited that it was in there. Here's another Louisa May Alcott, An Old-Fashioned Girl. I do own this. I got it from a book outlet earlier this year for just a couple of dollars, but it is like one of the Dover Classic editions, so it's not really anything special. This is like the loveliest old edition. and my mother-in-law said that this was one of her favorite books growing up, and she personally read this edition so many times. And in the beginning, it has my aunt's name, Suzanne, with Christmas of 1964. So it's really cool. And it just has some really sweet vintage illustrations. And let me just tell you, this book smells amazing. It's so, like, it smells like an old book. I love it so much. A couple more. I've got this book about the Von Trapp family singers, so that's cool. Definitely interested in reading this one. This one is actually written by Maria. There's this edition of Tom Sawyer. I do have a book of Tom Sawyer. It's actually a nice hardcover edition, so I don't know if I'm gonna keep this one. No, I don't even remember seeing this one. It's Household Stories by the Brothers Grimm. When I was looking through the box, I don't even remember seeing this one. I have the complete edition of Grimm's, but I don't think it's illustrated, and I like these illustrations. So those are all the books that my grandmother-in-law sent for Claire. So for a weekend where I'm supposed to be doing a reading challenge, I have not done a lot of reading today. Just the reading and finishing up of my Les Mis section, which I already mentioned. I hopped on the live show this afternoon and it was great. It's like the first time I've been on there and I've been completely caught up, so that's great. And then this afternoon I've just been working on my bullet journal, which has been awesome and I've really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna go finish dinner and then I am going to spend some time this evening reading. Good morning, it's Sunday. I didn't do a whole lot more recording yesterday, but I did get more read in The Master of Margarita. I'm actually doing a fairly decent job this reading challenge this weekend. I've read over 200 pages. I think I read like 70 something pages of The Master of Margarita last night, and then I read like 40 pages of Les Mis. So been reading around 100 pages each day so far. Could I have read more? Yes, absolutely. If I hadn't worked on my bullet journal, I absolutely could have read more than I did. But either way, I'm pretty happy with my progress. I have finished part 1. There are 2 parts in The Master and Margarita. So the first part is basically like the devil coming to Moscow, and the second part is all about like Margarita. The Master really wasn't in the first half all that much. Like, you get his story, but not until probably like half of the way through the first book, and then you don't see him very much otherwise, but that's kind of like lurking in the back of your mind as you're being introduced to Margarita. Like I said before, this book is so weird, but really funny in parts. It's so bizarre. But there's definitely notes of Stalinist Russia in here that I can see why it was not published during his life. Like, some of it is crazy. Like, this isn't spoilery. There's a guy who he has a dream. Basically, he goes crazy. A ton of people in this book just go crazy. And a ton of people just randomly disappear or die, which is, you know, kind of a theme of Stalinist Russia. So when people kind of get wise to what's going on, they disappear or they get institutionalized and go insane, which is a very interesting observation. But one person goes insane, and while he's in the insane asylum, he has a dream, and in the dream, he's in this theater, and there's this whole thing where they're trying to convince him to give his currency, and he's like, I don't have currency, I don't have currency. And then there's like this show and all these people come on. There's these plays talking about the evil of money and gold and how it makes you greedy, and like songs about that kind of stuff too. And then they're like, who wants to give up their currency now? And people start doing it, start believing like, oh, well, this is bad for me to have money. I can't be trusted with this money. So they start giving it to like the person who's in charge of the show, which is a very interesting thing with like communism and, you know, the whole lie that communism has of like, hey, we're going to share all our resources, give us your money and we'll distribute it evenly so everyone has the exact same amount. And then, you know, the dictator and the people in charge have plenty of money, and then everyone else is kind of like impoverished and oppressed. And so I just thought that was really interesting. So I'm definitely seeing like some of those themes of how Bulgakov is writing against like communism and against the Stalinist regime. But I can see again why this was not published while he was alive, because there's some stuff in it that is very damning to communism, and what the people kind of like suffered underneath that, under the guise of this being a very like weird and funny book. Like it's intended to be a satire and allegorical in that way, and just very representative without like outright saying it. So he's taking these very heavy topics and trying to make them like funny. Like, have you ever heard that saying, like, if you don't laugh about it, you'll cry about it? Like, that's kind of what this feels like. It's definitely entertaining. I like the way that it's written. It's very engaging, but it is really, really strange. I'm gonna see if I can finish it today. I think I have like 180 pages left, but I am planning to finish my bullet journal today. So maybe I'll show you like a before and after of one of the pages, like what it looks like with my pencil sketch, and then once it's done and all colored in. But I am going to try to record a video of it too. I don't know if I'm going to record a full planning video. I haven't done that in a while, where I record like me actually doing all of the drawing and everything, or if I'll just do a walkthrough, which is kind of what I've done, because those are a lot shorter. I don't know. We'll see. Now I am ready to go to church, and then we'll come home and have some lunch. Might take a nap. We'll see what the day has for us. Sitting out here on my porch swing. My father-in-law helped us put this up when they were visiting, and I've wanted a porch swing since I moved in here because it's just like a nice place to sit and read. I have done some more reading this afternoon and working on my bullet journal. I have less than 100 pages left in the Master and Margarita, so making progress on that. Might actually be able to finish it tonight before I fall asleep. We'll kind of see. Book 2 feels incredibly different to me than book 1. Book 1 felt darker. Like there was definitely humor in there and satire, but like it was a lot darker, a lot more people dying, being beheaded, disappearing, being put into mental institutions. There's a lot more of that. Part 2 is like really kind of supposed to be like a love story, but there's some really weird elements in it because it's Master and Margarita. Everything in it is weird, but the story seems incredibly different than the first part. Like the first part was, you know, about basically the devil coming to Moscow and him and his cronies just messing everything up and making chaos out of everything. And the second part actually is the story of Margarita and the Master, and like kind of like their love story and how she's trying to rescue him. So I feel like it was lighter in some ways. The devil is, I want to say like more sympathetic and helpful. Like, he likes Margarita, and his cronies are funnier and just seem, they seemed really menacing in the first book, and in the second book, not so much. So there's definitely feels like a tonal shift. I forgot to add that throughout is this running little narrative that's super weird. The master wrote this book about Pontius Pilate and Jesus. And so we're getting snippets of that throughout. I think there's only 2 of them in the first book, and I think we're heading into another big massive chunk. And it's really, I don't know, it's really strange. And I don't know how I feel about it because it's biblically very, very inaccurate. And as a Christian, there's a part of me that it bothers me, but then it's also well, when someone's not coming from the same world viewpoint that I am, it doesn't bother me as much because I don't expect them to say things the same way that I do. But I had done some research and actually found out that atheism was basically the religion or lack thereof in Russia. It was an atheistic nation. And so, kids were taught in school that Jesus wasn't a real person, and the Bible was ridiculed and stuff. So this is definitely a product of that. So that gives it kind of an interesting spin also. So part 2 has been very interesting and very different. The subject matter is definitely in some ways just as mature and dark as the first book, but it just doesn't feel that way for some reason. So I'm gonna do some more reading of it tonight. After I read it, I filmed my TBR video for September, which is cool because I kind of have a bunch of really fun stuff going on in September because it's my birthday month, so I kind of have some fun reading plans and also some fun tags that I'm gonna do and stuff, so I'm kind of excited about filming in September. That video should be the next one to come out. I've kind of been a little bit more sporadic in my videos the last few weeks. Kind of had a lot going on with my in-laws visiting, and then we've had some family stuff going on that's just been crazy and made it hard to film. So I've kind of just been doing 1 video a week recently, but I think that's gonna change in September because of a lot. I also got some of my bullet journal done, and I filmed some of it. I was outside because the lighting was better, and the lighting's really starting to wane. So I don't think it's gonna be a video of me doing literally the whole thing. It's probably gonna be a video of me doing some of it and then a flip through, because I just think that's gonna be easier and better. So it's 7 o'clock, so it's kind of getting later. It's not super late, but it's kind of getting a little bit later. So I am going to try to finish the Master Margarita tonight. And if I do, I'll definitely update you as to my final thoughts. And also I kind of want to go inside because it's kind of hot out here. It's 90 degrees and super humid. So I think I'm ready to go back into the air conditioning. It's Monday morning, so in true Tiffany style, I am finishing my weekend reading vlog on Monday morning. I did not finish the Master Margarita last night. I fell asleep with about 30 pages left, so I actually finished it this morning, so I can give you my final thoughts, although my final thoughts are very convoluted. Suffice it to say that the ending kind of confused me a little bit. There's definitely some wonky spirituality in it, so just be aware of that. If you have a Christian worldview, there are going to be things in this book that you don't agree with and seem downright weird. Towards the beginning of the book, there's a scene with Pontius Pilate and Jesus is portrayed as just a regular guy who loves peace and believes the best of people, and somehow people are trying to get him in trouble, but he's not the Messiah and he doesn't believe that. So and there's no resurrection or anything like that. So there's definitely elements in there that are not necessarily correct biblically, but I don't think that that was the author's point. Having read more about Bulgakov's life, it's very interesting to see how much of the book is actually autobiographical, how much of the story of the master is reflected in him and Margarita in his third wife. So you can kind of see a lot of parallels there, a lot of parallels with Bulgakov's relationship with Stalin at the time. And I think I mentioned last night that Stalinist Russia was definitely very atheistic. Churches were outlawed unless they were essentially going to like say exactly what the government wanted them to say, which I just read a book about that last month actually when I read Tortured for Christ by Richard Wurmbrand. He's actually Romanian, but you know, Russia came into Romania and took it over, and the same kind of thing happened there. So that was an interesting like other factual side to that story. But overall, I kind of feel like the story of Pontius Pilate and Jesus doesn't totally fit in with the rest of the story. A lot of people, I think, say that it gives more meaning to the ending, but I feel like maybe I'm missing something because it didn't for me. It just made it kind of more confusing for me. I mean, all storylines do converge, but it was just, I don't know, it was strange. I want to do more research about Bulgakov's life and about Stalinist Russia because then I think that I will understand more of the references there, although I am really happy that this is not like my first foray into Russian literature because I totally understood the nods to Pushkin and Dostoevsky and Tolstoy that were in there, so that was kind of cool that I have read works by all of them, so when they're referenced I kind of like get it. Not everything, but I think that there's a lot of nuances that I didn't understand because I'm not super familiar with Russian culture, particularly Stalinist Russia culture. So I would like to do more research into that and read this book again at some point. Overall, it was so weird, but also really entertaining, almost like a train wreck that you can't look away from. Overall, I think it was a really fascinating book and I really liked it, but it's very surreal. There are moments of this book. There's a ball that happens in the second part of the book. I'm not going to go into any details, but it's like that whole chapter of the preparation for the ball, and then the ball is like a fever dream. It's so weird. It kind of reminds me in the way that it feels to that chapter in The Brothers Karamazov. If you've read it, you might know what I'm talking about. Just bizarre. It's a bizarre book overall. It's also kind of a fun ride, and it was definitely really entertaining in parts, really funny in parts, really sobering in parts, because that's definitely really heavy stuff that Bulgakov is dealing with here and satirizing, but whew, yeah, would not have wanted to live in Russia during the time of Stalin. Just leave it at that. So anyways, those are kind of my very fresh thoughts on finishing The Master and Margarita. I did pretty well this weekend. I met both my goals. I caught up with my Les Mis reading and I finished The Master and Margarita. So I'm thrilled with that. I probably could have read more, especially if I wasn't working on bullet journaling, but I'm happy with how much I got done. So I guess this is the weekend of foreign translated classics. You know, we've got a Russian classic and we've got a French classic. So if you're not into classics, hopefully this vlog wasn't boring for you. I would love to hear from you down in the comments below if you have read either of these books, and if you have, what are your thoughts on it? I would especially love to talk to you if you have read The Master and Margarita to kind of see what you thought of it. I feel like it's not a book I've really heard a ton of people talk about, so I would really be interested to hear what you think of it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.